Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. And as people join on, they can join in. I want to welcome everybody to the August 5th edition of Fire on the Fives. Today our guest is Mr. Scott Anderson. He is from the Wildland Fire Safety Training Annual Refresher Group, which is part of the National Wildfire Coordination Group. You may have heard the acronym, and it's referred to as WFSTAR. This is the group that does the annual refresher training, RT-130, for all wildland firefighters, and they must take this course prior to getting red carded or certified for the coming fire season. Scott will give some more information on WFSTAR, and we'll talk about the module that we asked that you guys take a look at, or that you took a look at, the short video that about Burnovers. And Scott will talk a little bit about Burnovers and the information in that presentation, and also a little bit about how the numbers were crunched. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
All right, thanks for having me. So what I'm going to do, first I'll give you just a little bit of biography on myself, and I'll describe what we do with the WFSTAR program, and then I'm going to talk about one specific module that we created this year, the analytics of a burnover, and how we did it, and what we plan to do next. So anyway, I started in fire in 1978, and I've been in an engine, on a helitack crew, on a hot shot crew, been a smoke jumper, and then various operations fire line positions. And I'm scheduled to retire this April. But for the meantime, I'm the program lead for the Fire Refresher Safety Training Program. And basically what this program is it consists of two full-time guys, myself and Eric Hipke. And then we have a militia staff of people that we pull together every fall to help us build these educational modules. And typically we build between, I would say in the range of 8 to 12 per year to post. And currently we're going through a pretty dramatic reinvention in that we, a couple of years ago we went to all online, all web-based, and right now we're going through a reinvention of produce and post. So we're not going to just put out, do a batch release each spring of different topics. Now we're going to produce and post these topics, and we'll have approximately one module coming out every other month. So basically, what are these modules? And they're continuing education products for firefighters, and they can be used, they're used primarily, as Larry said, as a way for people to get their refresher training to get recertified with their red card each year. And now, like I said, everything is housed on the WFSTAR site. And one of the other things that I should mention is that we've kind of changed our mission a little bit in that we're trying to be a lot more collaborative with groups like yours, in that we're moving away from developing the content. And, for example, if we worked with you guys, we would get the content or your message from you, and our job would be to package and market that message. And so, but the topic range that we select from is out of the Red Book, and we have 4 core topics that we have to look at and work within. However, we're revisiting the validity of those right now and looking at revising those. But the one that I'm going to talk about today, the Take 5 at 2, Analytics of a Burnover, is under the top core topic of entrapment avoidance in the Red Book. So that's how we got to that. And you guys feel free to ask questions or make comments. That would be just fine. So what I have on the screen right now is the site that people work from. And just really, I'm not going to waste too much time going through the site with you, but you can see that what we have in production right now and the ones that we just released, and then we have a queue of other ones that we don't have up on the screen yet that are in pre-production. And you can see right now we have a featured module, and that's the Brett Butler's research on safety zones, which we had a heck of a time getting out because for bureaucratic reasons. But It's out and on the streets, and I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with what he talked about. So the heart, you can see on the top there are different categories you can go into, but the heart of this website is the module library. And so if I go into the module library, it's broken into different categories: aviation, case studies, 10 and 18 LCES. Yeah, you can read them for yourself as I scroll through. But the Take 5 at 2, analysis of a burnover, is obviously under fire behavior and weather. And the other fire behavior and weather modules we have, as you can see, we've got a lightning module. We have Scott Dorval, some of you might recognize him, talking about forming clouds. And this screen capture is kind of weird, but this is about interpreting the fire weather forecasts that come out, and that's Rick Ochoa. And then you can see we've got some other ones also. And so each category has about, I would say, around 7 modules in it. And we've got a total of 56 modules on the website right now. And you can see that each module typically contains a video, some links. You can see the links we have here. And on this particular project, we built some downloadable posters. So, any questions on the website or the program before I move on to this particular project? Okay, fair enough. So on this one, like I said, it falls under the category of entrapment avoidance. And so when we started looking at this, basically our mission, if you were to define the mission that we had, was to reduce the number of burnover fatalities. Simple as that. And so the place we first started was we decided to determine who was most likely to be caught in a burnover. And so at the time, we have a professional reading list that we promote within the program here. And one of the books we were reading was called Predictive Analytics. And I know that you guys, it's basically what you do, but a lot of other folks don't do it. And predictive analytics basically is the science of using data to predict most likely outcomes. And so, which I think exactly what you guys mostly do. So we decided to use predictive analytics sort of like, I think one of our other major influences was the movie Moneyball. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's where they hire this guy to put together a baseball team based purely on the data of how they play and the economics of hiring these guys, and they end up with a winning team. It's a true story, and the point is the data counts. There's a lot of companies now that are using data to make predictions that help them to make decisions. For example, right now, if you look at, say, Cabela's, I bet they have a pretty good idea of what your buying patterns are and what your next move's going to be. Or a good example also is Netflix. I know that Netflix analyzes your viewing habits, and they make recommendations on other things you might like, and then with the hopes that you'll view more of their shows. And I think it's something like in the area of 70% of the views are based on the recommendations they make, which are based on their predictive analytics. And so anyway, we went down this road of predictive analytics, and we primarily tried to focus at the demographics of the firefighters caught in the burnovers and the conditions. And, those are 2 pretty big categories, and so we weren't exactly sure how deep we should go on each one of them. So we started just looking at the data that we already had, which, by the way, is a lot. And it's, I would say at this point, in general, the historic data we have is kind of disorganized, and so you really have to earn it to find it. And we had 2 folks, Emil Magallanes, he did the initial research, and he started his research based on an article by Jim Cook about fire fatalities from years ago, and we expanded on that. as much as we could, and then we had Kerry Boyd Peak from our local external affairs office truth all this stuff for us the best we could. And so anyway, what did we learn? The primary thing is, I will show you, we learned, look on the time of blow-up, we learned that there was a real common data point on the time of blow-up. And as you can see on these, they're between 1400 and 1630. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. It wasn't a surprise to me. But when you know, in the past, you could say things like, well, when do you think the fire is most active? I think people could make a pretty accurate guess. But with the data backing us up, we've actually got some hard data to establish this pattern of fire blow-ups, which is really like gold for us to follow, you know, our initial, as I said, define the mission before and to reduce the number of fire fatality burnovers. And so this was really setting us, you know, that direction. And so, oops. Then we had time of burnover.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
On that, when they occur, so you said the bulk happens in there. Did you have a high and a low in terms of earliest time one happened and latest time one happened?
Yeah, it's pretty much bracketed. I think Battlement Creek is first at 1400, and then I think 30 Mile was at, actually, I think 1634 we've got. Okay. And so, but they're all within that range. I mean, there's one or two anomalies, of course, but primarily that's it. And every firefighter knows that that's when things start happening. And unfortunately, we have a history of being the most aggressive right at the height of the fire activity.
Okay. And the reason I ask is, you know, that recent burnover on the Frog fire here just recently, I think they're estimating that at the time that burnover occurred was 1900.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, that's an anomaly. However, I think it'll be interesting for us to follow the trending and see if all of a sudden the more extreme fire behavior, you know, if this thing can stand up to that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but I think that's why it's important not to just sort of, you know, guess on this stuff and have these data points.
Right.
And then, you know, build your recommendations based on the actual data.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of like, I remember we did a module with Merrill Saline a couple of years ago about the history of fire in the Salmon River breaks. I'm not sure if you guys saw that or remember it. But one of the things he said was, look, if you guys haven't had a wind event in 4 days, you should be expecting it. It's coming. And the historical data, the patterns show that that's exactly what happens. And I don't think most people really think about it like that. And so just an awareness of the patterns in these things is pretty important. But, you know, when you look at these, what we grabbed onto was the time. Obviously, that's a reflection of the conditions. And I think I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but for future predictive analytics style predictions, I mean, if you dove into, you know, the time of these blow-ups, and that's the result of, I don't know, you guys, you tell me, but I think it's probably a pattern of conditions that are lining up. And it would be interesting to see which, you know, if there's something that's kind of the tipping point or something like that as they move into these, you know, these kind of conditions. But at any rate, that's the kind of stuff we've been trying to figure out. And then, so we've got the time of blow-up, we've got the time of burnover, and I'm going to have to go back, and then we've got the time that it took from blow-up to burnover. And so, there we go. And you can see it wasn't much time. Some, you know, some more than others, obviously. However, what that told us, and based on all the research we did, is that there was no evidence that anybody was in a safety zone when they got caught in these burnovers. And so the time of blow-up that they didn't recognize soon enough to get to a safety zone or whatever, but almost virtually every one of them was caught outside a safety zone. We don't have any evidence that anybody was actually in their safety zone. And that could be, I mean, I would love for somebody to dig into that deeper, but we didn't find it. The cool thing about this is it really supports some of the stuff that Brett Butler is talking about in his new research on safety zones, where he almost says that it's not the safety zones, it's the escape routes. And so it's they're one and the same. And so I think that this data sort of is a reflection of that. And so anyway, let me look at my notes here for a minute. Okay. Stand by one. Okay, so we went through and we collected this data on time of blow-up, time of burnover, time between blow-up and burnover. And then we found some other interesting evidence that the average age of the firefighter caught in a burnover is 24. And that really tells us a lot. There were two anomalies among that group. That was Jim Thrash, who was 44, who was killed on South Canyon, and Eric Marsh, who was 43, on Yarnell. So that means that we're sort of narrowing down our target audience. And the other thing that we figured out is that we couldn't find anything that distinguishes between male or female firefighters. So, 1994 was the first female firefighter fatality we could find, and since then there's been 38 male fatalities and 7 female. And so we couldn't find any really useful information out of that, other than it is an interesting observation. And so now we've got all this stuff. We've got all this data, and we put together these times, and so it's sort of, so what? What are we going to do with this now? We want to try and influence people's behavior, and so we came up with this Take 5 at 2 campaign, where we said, okay, well, this is the behavior we want to influence, and we're looking at a group of our specific target are 24-year-old line-going firefighters. So how do we influence their behavior based on the data that we put together on burnovers? So we put together the Take 5 at 2 campaign and put it all together in a nice package, and then, so you've got the data, you've got the package, then what? How do you get this thing out there? How do you reach the audience? So the nice thing is that we had,
What is the Take 5 at 2?
Oh, I'm sorry. Take 5 at 2 means at 2 o'clock, which is the beginning of this blow-up burnover time, at 2 o'clock we're asking you to take a tactical pause. And one of the questions is, what does that mean? What do you want us to do during this tactical pause? And basically it comes down to, is what you're doing right now, should you keep doing what you're doing right now? And that means that you should reevaluate things like safety zones, weather conditions, fire behavior, the condition of your crew, the condition of your equipment. So at that point in time, it's kind of like a little bit of a halftime, I guess. Where are we at? Where are we going from this point? Let's just take a quick look. And so we're asking people to take this 5-minute tactical pause to do a reevaluation. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now I'm talking about how do you reach your target audience. And so this is where a lot more collaboration came in. Well, the first thing is, since we had our target group identified, we had to package this stuff to fit their learning style and fit the way they get their information, and just make sure that we were pretty specific in who we were targeting here. We found that when you cast a pretty wide net and you try and make something that's kind of everything for everyone, it just becomes fairly diluted. So we're trying to be real specific in this message to these folks, these particular folks. And so we used video, we used animations, we used Prezi, we had the stickers, and we had the posters. And so we kind of tried to hit every learning style we could that we thought a 24-year-old might pay attention to, because we have this kind of, I guess our guiding direction for everything we produce is the acronym is ARC, A-R-C, and the first thing is you have to get their attention. You have to demonstrate relevance, and then you have to build their confidence with whatever you present. And so we're trying to do these three things with the information and the tools we have to package this stuff. And so one thing I want to talk about just a tiny bit, are you guys familiar with infographics? Anybody? Basically what an infographic is in the video you saw a screenshot of a bunch of sort of avatar firefighters standing there in different colors to represent which areas people were most likely to be killed in, and then which agencies were most likely or had the most burnovers and such. But those images are called infographics, and the purpose for them is to give you a graphic depiction without having to have you read through a text description, because we're finding that we don't have much luck putting our messages out with just descriptions in text. I mean, think about you guys, and I'm probably the same, but if somebody sends me some document that they want me to read right away, if it's more than one page, it goes right to the bottom of the pile. Not that I'm not a reader, because I am, but just nowadays people are not super receptive to getting that kind of messaging. I mean, I know that when I need to learn how to do something and do it fast, I'm all over YouTube kind of stuff. But an infographic, a good example of it too, would be when you buy computer hardware, printers, whatever. You have the manual, and then you have the quick guide where it's got all the colored lines and icons of all the different pieces and how they click together. And I don't know about everybody on the phone call, but I'm all about the infographics if they're available. So we're really making a push to use those more. So anyway, we've got this all put together, and then another phase of collaboration begins, and that's the distribution. So now we've got to distribute this thing, and we decide we're going to do kind of a messaging blitz. And so kind of the way it worked out is we started with the conventional way we do this stuff, and that is to post it on Refresher just before fire season for people to see it. And then we made it a featured module to bring some extra attention to it. And then we posted the posters, hoping that we could get people to print these off and post them in their, in their local units or in their crew buggies or something like that. And then we had some stickers made that had the Take 5 at 2 icon on them. And we had 2 different sizes made, and I think we spent a total of $600 on that. And then we had to figure out a way to distribute those things. And so, obviously we couldn't put together enough for every fire crew in the country, so we decided one of the most influential groups on fire lines right now are the Hot Shots. And so we worked with Brian Cardoza, who's the chair of the Hot Shot Committee, and asked him if he would write a letter and then to expect these in the mail and if we could distribute them on his behalf. And so he was good with that. So he wrote the letter, we packaged them up, and we mailed a package of these stickers and a couple other things for hotshot crews to put on their helmets and such, so other people would see it and the hope was be influenced by that. And then the next thing we did was, I don't know if you guys were in on the anniversaries of South Canyon and Yarnell. It was July 6th to July, or what was Yarnell anniversary date?
June 30th.
June 30th, thank you. So we had, Yarnell to South Canyon, so June 30th to July 6th, we put out one message per day related to this Take 5 at 2 campaign. So it came out, in the sit report every day with a different element of the Take 5 at 2. And one of those things, the big one was the new research from Brett Butler, and then we had one on time to burn injury, and we had the margins module and all these kind of things. But there's a kind of a line drawn through all of these things that we're trying to do and take this real strategic kind of flanking messaging system to get it out to everybody. And so, and this really helps talking to you folks, because this is just one more way that we can, get people on board with this, the analytics that we did, and why they should pay attention to it. Okay, any questions about that part? Okay, so
Scott, what kind of feedback are you getting from the users on this campaign?
Well, pretty good actually. We haven't gotten a lot. We've gotten more feedback. I would say more feedback on the mid-level manager types. But as far as the firefighters that we're targeting, we haven't heard a whole lot from them. I mean, we don't really, at this point, we don't really have a way to get feedback from them, so I would say stand by on that one.
Okay.
But I was just about to talk about what's next, and that is one of the things that's next for us, is to follow up and see, after a season of this, if it's something that's going to take hold. And I think for us, the one thing that's important is that once we get done with this, we're hoping that it makes kind of a cultural change, in that people will just get into the mindset that at 1400 every day, it's halftime. You need to take a break and reevaluate if you're doing the right thing right now. And so once we get that out there, I don't think we're going to do much more with it beyond what we're doing right now, aside from getting feedback and seeing if the feedback can help us identify, a new direction, or if we need to do any enhancements or anything like that, or if maybe some of our data isn't quite right. We've had one person call in and say that they thought that some of our data wasn't right, and the point is, it creates some pretty good discussions. But one of the other things that we want to do is we want to expand the use of some of the predictive analytics, and figure out a system of how to make it more useful. I know that when we first started out with, trying to identify who's most likely to be caught in a burnover, we were looking at things that, so take this firefighter that's 24 years old, and let's figure out if this person's on a hot shack crew or a jumper or a helitack crew. Put them in categories based on that. Let's see how many years they have as firefighters. Let's see what quals they have, and see if any one thing lines up. And maybe one of the things we could find out is, these guys typically had never had any training in such and such an area. So they would be. So if you took all that data and you placed all these folks in, put that data, assign that data to them, and then put them into 3 categories, say low, medium, and high risk, and then potentially, if there was a way to move somebody, say, from a high risk to moderate risk, a medium risk, then you should do that. And I think one of them would probably be they'd age out into a lower risk. But things like different kinds of training, maybe, or maybe it's more hotshot crews than engine crews. And if that's the case, why is that the case? So stuff like that. So we're just trying to promote the use of predictive analytics a little bit more. And we are trying to, like I say, figure out what our next move is with this stuff. And then as far as you guys, the thing that we can, that we can actually offer up is, if you guys do have some sort of a short targeted message, sitting down and putting that together and getting it out there is the kind of thing that we could help you guys with. Get it in a nice package and get it out in the field. So basically, that's all I have, you guys.
That was great, Scott. Thanks. I really appreciate it. I'd like to open it up to the offices in the field here. If you have any questions on Burnovers or the analytics used to come up with the data.
Hey, Larry, this is Eric.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah, I have maybe just a question for Scott. One of the other things, looking at the time windows and such, what about the time of the incident in terms of when do these burnovers occur? Is it, 2 days into the fire? Is it when there's a type 3 transitioning to type 1? It seems like sometimes these events happen early, just as things are starting to get ramped up before perhaps communications get completely established, and perhaps maybe the way the fire would be fought would be differently now that you have a full type 2 team there, type 1 team. Do you see what I'm getting at?
I think that would be a great set of data to get, because I think what you're saying, if you ask most people, they would say just exactly what you just said. But if you collected the data, you could either validate it or maybe you would be surprised at the result. And if there was a real common set of data like you described, then what would you do to change that? I mean, it seems like that would give you a basis for making some pretty significant changes in how people, conduct operations.
You mentioned how aggressive we tend to be out in the fire community, and perhaps especially early on, that's when we may be aggressive to the point where we don't have all of our resources around us to allow us to truly be aggressive and safe at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree, and but that's the kind of thing that I think this could be expanded into, and it really could give the decision makers, the ops guys, a lot more direction on, how aggressively they engage in the beginning stages or something like that. Because I know that in the past I've found that, for example, order an air tanker at 10 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's going to start quizzing you on why is it blowing up or what's going on. No, we don't want it to blow up. That's why we're ordering it now. Or you're fighting fire at that 1430 to 1600 range, and you're trying to find a safe place to let this fire do its thing, but all these resources are still coming at you, and you have to do something with them. And so I think it's one of those things where you can modify how you deploy your resources, for example. But I think the possibilities are limitless, and and it's not just my opinion. It's actually based in fact. And you look at the number of companies now that are relying on predictive analytics. It's pretty much all of them. I mean, what is it? Target, I think. Target is one of the leaders in using predictive analytics to market specific products to specific customers. And they almost got it to the point where they went a little bit over the top with it and had to pull it back. They were getting so good at it, and it was a little bit of a privacy issue. That's how good these things have gotten. Anybody else?
Okay. Well, thanks, Scott. I really want to let you know that we appreciate you coming out and talking to us. We hope to have you back for some other interesting stuff you have on here. I'm sure we'll be working with you more, and maybe even see if we can work up something where we can do a special abbreviated version of RT-130 in the spring for as just kind of a not mandated for all the offices, but something that we could do on Fire on the Fives that just gets people spun up and ready for the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll take any input we can get, and like I say, our job is just to deliver other people's messages, because we're really trying to ramp up the collaboration a lot more and tap into. Sometimes we see these projects out there that people are doing, and they're, it's really great stuff. I mean, it's research and all these different systems people have come up with, but there's not really a great way to get it out to the people who need it. and there's not anybody who really focuses on getting it packaged up to a specific audience or something like that, So.
Okay. Well, thanks again. So for everybody out there, again, I want to thank you for attending the Fire on the Fives. This is kind of a brand new thing, so we're always welcoming feedback on Fire on the Fives. You can give feedback to Robin Heffernan or Larry Van Bussum. Just email us and let us know what you think, or if you have any items of fire weather importance that you think would be a good subject for Fire on the Fives, we'd be certainly open to looking into it. I would like to invite you all to the September Fire on the Fives. Actually, the 5th of September falls on Saturday, so it will actually be on the 4th of September. It's going to be an interesting Fire on the Fives. We're going to be talking about methodology for coming up with mixing heights. There's been some research done by the Desert Research Institute that looked into how to verify and what's the best methodology for coming up with mixing heights. And as we explore the possibility of putting out some national mixing height grids, I think this would be good information to everybody to take a look at and see where the research is on that subject. With that, again, I want to thank everybody for attending and wish you all a good day.
All right, thanks everybody.